Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Ackerman, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. Welcome back to the show, Rick.
Thanks for inviting me on, Jim. It is always a pleasure.
Rick, do we see any particular action on the markets now that many organizations are saying they think they have an election result?
Well, yeah, I think the market is sort of trading up on the usual malarkey, but in this case, it's the idea that things are getting settled. It doesn't look like Trump's legal case is going to carry the day, and I suppose it's better to have a concrete idea of who's going to be the next president than to have that matter unsettled. But you take one step beyond that idea and you realize that you've got the most anti-business administration in history about to take residency in the White House. So I think the market's sort of overdone the celebration, but still a little more celebrating to do on the ostensible stability that we're going to have when Trump's legal fight comes to a dead end.
For people trying to plan what they're going to do with their investments, is there anything that's favored or not favored right now?
This is a tough market, you know. I mean, it's almost transparent as to what the professionals are doing. All right, the professionals, aka the chimpanzees who manage other people's money, have been buying themes, you know, and when everybody sort of realized on March 25th, 24th, after the market finished crashing, that some businesses would survive. Well, they took the short list of survivors, especially the mega cap stocks, and they bid them, I would say, into the ionosphere, but it's way, way above that. You know, they bid them to the moon, really. And you wind up really with some stocks like Chipotle and I think it's got a multiple over 100 right now, and big stocks like Amazon carrying multiples of, well, they range between 40 and 100 for some of these huge stocks. But it's not like these stocks are going to carry the world. I mean, a couple of them they just sell nothing really. Amazon does. But Google, as we know, and Facebook are just glorified advertising agencies. So you wonder how much money they're worth, especially when they're all feeding business to the last man standing in the retail world, which is Amazon. So I think, you know, you take a step back and there's still maybe just a little more rumor to buy because we've got these vaccines starting to come onto the front page of the newspapers, and so I think the market's got a little higher to go, but we're just about out of room here. It'll be time to sell the news within maybe the next month or so.
Do you have any confidence in these vaccines, or are they more like the announcement every company says, yeah, we're working on this particular project and it's showing great promise, but that doesn't mean it's actually going to work?
Well, it looks like it works somehow, but, you know, the initial announcements have said that they're 100% safe and mid-90s% effective. But I don't think there's any basis for making such ridiculous claims. You know, the vaccines, the testing that they've done has been a really small sample. And the way they do small sampled, I mean, this is truly a vaccine that's been designed by computer. They've shortcut a lot of the trials that ordinarily take place using a vaccine process that is it's messenger RNA. It's something new under the sun, but it did allow the testing to cut quite a few corners, presumably safely. I mean, I don't think that these drugs are going to be without their effect, a positive effect, a benefit. But to claim 100% safe, well, we have no idea what mRNA is going to produce in the way of autoimmune responses. We have no idea. Well, we really don't know how safe it's going to be in a large population. You know, we've got this relatively small sample right now. And as far as the efficacy of the vaccine, well, they didn't really road test it specifically for the main group that's dying, mainly people over 70. And so there's some big questions there. And I think the initial announcements have been wildly bullish.
Well, yeah, I was wondering if you tested it on a bunch of 20 and 30-somethings, and the people who are dying from it the most are 70 plus. Shouldn't that be the people you tested on?
Right. But that really wasn't the case. And so they're rushing it to the market, and we can only hope that it works as well as they claim, but I'm skeptical.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after this.
Value from success. Growth in discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Rick, what's going on with gold?
Well, if you look at the long-term charts, it looks great. I mean, when the Pfizer announcement came out about the vaccine, they knocked gold down $100. And if you think about it, there's no real reason why the bullish news on a vaccine should be bearish for gold. But I think what happened was that the market exploded with such volatility that the sleazeballs who manipulate the market for a living said, well, you know, gold doesn't seem to be showing any particular energy today, so let's just bang it down. Because as we know, the real professional players in gold, they're like options players. They know that the money is all made on the short sale. So a lot of short positions got covered on that $100 shakedown. But I think that the bullish, because the trend sort of started out that way, that the vaccine doesn't seem to be helping gold or bullion much. Let's kick the stuffing out of it, and that's just continued really. But the longer term charts, when you measured a 100-point down day and gold's been down $40 today, they don't look like much on that monthly chart. You know, it's a mild correction, although if you're holding gold or gold stocks, it doesn't feel so mild.
Do you have any idea who or what is behind gold right now? And could this be another case of massive market manipulation where somebody wants to drive the price down so they can snap it up at a lower price?
Well, they don't meet in a smoke-filled room, you know, the bullion bankers, but they do have these broad understandings, such as we have in the stock market, like, hey guys, we've gone so crazy with these mega cap growth stocks. Let's go to switch to another theme. So then they arbitrarily start buying the Russell 2000 and small caps until that gets ridiculously overdone. So you know, as I was saying, there's a lot of money made in paper gold, which is really leveraged in a way that leaves the big players effectively short gold. They never have to deliver against the paper that they're short, but sometimes it gets a little out of hand, and they try to get them back in. They try to bring back into balance, short position against at least some paper claim or claim on physical gold. So yeah, it's one big shell game, but and that's all it is really. But I think over time, true market forces will have their way, and I think they favor gold. I think that gold is in a bull market right now, but it's certainly susceptible to short-term manipulation.
Martin Armstrong believes that we're headed for a great recession, or not recession, but depression in the coming years because of the huge government debt. And of course, back in the 1930s, the U.S. government confiscated gold except for jewelry. Does that mean everybody's going to convert either their gold into jewelry, or are you better off to hide it under the floorboards rather than have it stored at a bank or some other facility?
Well, I think that the confiscation of gold under Roosevelt it's going to make it harder to do that again, because everybody saw, exactly what happened, that they pegged the price of gold way below the market, and it was all done in an opportunistic way by the government, if not to say outright sleazy way. So I think there's going to be a lot more resistance to this idea of confiscating gold, and there's really no telling how the Biden camp will look on that. They've already kind of shot down Judy Shelton as a Federal Reserve board member, or her candidacy, simply because she's mentioned that she's associated with liking gold, maybe even a gold standard. So I don't know. I don't know that anybody in Biden's camp, except for maybe Bernie Sanders, would be brazen enough to sort of make a move against gold. So it's unpredictable, but I would say they're going to get quite a fight if there's any move to confiscate gold this time around.
Does it tell you anything about future policies, with Janet Yellen being named to head the Treasury Department after running the Fed for so many years?
Well, Biden, I think, is just trying to say it's going to be business as usual. Don't worry. There's no reason to be scared. And in that respect, I would have to say you couldn't do much better than put Yellen in there. She's kind of a nobody, a non person with no real ideas of her own, and I think that's a safe bet. The fact that you could ask 10,000 people on the streets, including you could even probably walk around Harvard, Cambridge, and ask that question, and you bump into professors like, well, what do we remember Janet Yellen for? And everybody would draw a blank. So she's a pretty good candidate then.
Sort of like crustless white bread or plain Jell-O.
That's exactly what I was going to say. She's so white bread mayonnaise that at least no one's scared of her.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after this.
Ackerman Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Ackerman's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at ackermanresources.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Rick, what do you see ahead for the U.S. dollar?
Well, it's been struggling. I've been pretty much a dollar bull for the last 40 years. And, I would say that, I'm not ready to give up on it. I've been a dollar bull mainly because, I am a deflationist. I don't think that, our debt problem can settle in any way other than, deflation. And that implies, a dollar that's relatively scarce. But I have to say that even as we speak, the dollar index is trading exactly on a trend line that I've drawn that goes all the way back to 2011. So we're at a critical juncture, and if it breaks down here, I don't think it's going to kill the dollar, but it's certainly going to send it significantly lower. So with the longer term, you look at a longer term chart, and you see that the dollar is still in a bull trend, but any lower here, and the exact number is 92.24. That's where we're trading now, and that is almost to the penny where my trend line going back to 2012 comes in. So very, very crucial right here, and a breakdown would, well, it would certainly be be bullish for gold for one, but it would sort of take me away from the logic of my deflationary end game.
What does the government have to do to keep the economy from totally crashing and burning?
The empirical answer is that they have to keep creating higher and higher amounts of stimulus. You know, I think I mentioned a column that I did for Barron's a long time ago. This would have been in the late 1990s, when you could correlate each dollar of GDP growth to a certain amount of borrowing that had been done. And at that time, the best experience out of the post-war period was that we were getting a dollar's growth for each 56 cents of borrowing, I think it was. But by the time I was writing this think piece for Barron's in late 90s, things had seemingly gone out of control. You know, it was taking about $2.54 to create that dollar of real GDP growth. So now, I mean, I had no idea back then how much crazier things would get, but it takes an enormity, really, of borrowing, whether at the Fed level or through monetization or at the consumer level, whatever. It takes an enormous amount of borrowing to generate a dollar's worth of real GDP growth. And there, you know, you're not even subtracting too much of an inflation rate from it. But so you don't really need much growth to generate a percentage point of real growth. But anyway, we're in kind of a vicious spiral here where they just have to stimulate harder and harder, more and more, to less and less effect.
Should companies that were busy buying back their stocks at ultra-high prices be bailed out? Shouldn't they have saved their money for a rainy day like Ford did back in the last recession?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question, but to be fair to all these companies who don't deserve fairness, really, but they're just, I don't know, giant airbags. Where would you put the money? I mean, I think that they at least have the justification that if we've got, you know, a case of Google and Amazon, some of these giants, when they're talking about surplus cash of $10, $20, $30 billion, it's reasonable for them to say, well, you know, the best place we can find to put our money is in ourselves. So there is, at least outwardly, a justification for doing it. But, you know, the negative, the flip side of it is that these stocks get so bid up, they get so pumped, really, that they reach price levels that are not by any stretch sustainable.
Do you see the Amazons of the world, or in fact, it's just the Amazon, being broken up because it's, quote, the only company? And is it possible to break it up?
Well, in better times. Well, there was in better times when I was really trying to put the knock on Amazon, mainly because you could see that it was wiping out small independent businesses. You couldn't operate outside of Amazon. And now that we see them jumping into prescription drugs, it's hard to miss it, you know, that Amazon essentially wants to be the dominant force in selling virtually everything we buy. I mean, who knows, they could get into selling their own power, generating stations, whatever. And I don't know whether it relates to some streak of megalomania in Bezos, but that's where they're headed. I mean, they're about to take on one of the biggest, industries in the country and try to put CVS and Walgreens and Rite Aid put them all out of business. So, but if you take the flip side, if we're going into a deep depression, and I think Armstrong's right about that, it's hard to imagine that Amazon would not come under fire, since they're the ones who sell us everything at whatever price they determine is whatever the traffic will bear. And, they, in those circumstances, when the public gets really upset that, hey, we got to pay Amazon monopoly prices for pretty much everything, they could eventually come to be regulated. It probably would have been more likely under Trump, because Trump and Bezos were definitely not buddy-buddy. But those things, it's very speculative, and it'll be a long ways off. But I think in really hard times, Amazon's going to come under fire. And, the story always was that Amazon, you could get great deals on Amazon, but once they come to dominate this market or that market, they're not going to be such, you won't be able to find those great deals. In fact, you may even have to start paying for shipping and, things like that. And based on history, I mean, it's almost entirely predictable that a company that essentially consolidates monopoly power in a particular market will raise prices. So that's something we have to look forward to with Amazon. That it's right now it's the cheapest, best place to shop for just about everything, but it's not chiseled in stone that they're going to keep those great prices.
Over 70% of jobs in Canada and the U.S. were generated by small and medium-sized businesses. What happens when they don't exist anymore to the job market?
See, that's the crazy thing. There was this put-up job. The Wall Street Journal is about one of the biggest source of lies in the news world, and believe me, they've got some real competition there. But they had some story on the front page about, the American companies say that they're over the worst, that they're back on track. But they're talking about the mega companies, the Amazon or the Facebooks and the Googles that don't really make anything. Even Microsoft doesn't make anything really. They just sell us software on subscription now. And so there's this idea that the big companies are going to somehow carry America, but most employment, you're right, is at the level of small business, and small businesses are getting wrecked. I have a friend, they've run probably the most popular restaurant in Boulder, and popular enough that when Obama came through Boulder, that's where they staged a breakfast for him. He had breakfast at this place, and they've been very clever about staying alive, and it's been okay during the summer, but Boulder gets pretty cold in the winter. And it turns out that just to rent a space heater would be, I think they were saying that it's $5,000 a week to, all the space heaters are sold out. So they may not survive. They've been around for 26 years, and I don't know how many people they have on their payroll, but I would guess somewhere in the low, 100 or, however, it's a pretty good number, but there's a lot of ripple effect from that. Those are people who pay rent. Their landlords depend on them to pay the rent, but they're all going to be without jobs. So when you eliminate, this is going to be a disastrous winter for retail, for travel and entertainment, and for the Wall Street Journal to just kind of write them off and say everyth's fine because, these hosers like Facebook and Google are making plenty of money. Well, they're not going to carry the whole world. So that is, and the businesses, they're going to be lost forever. I mean, would you go back into that business, a restaurant business? And what it's going to take will be a disaster in real estate that brings rents down so low that bold entrepreneurs can go back into the restaurant business. But we have sort of in the pipeline here, or baked in the cake, as it were, an absolute stunning disaster with respect to the condition of small business in this country.
And does Amazon realize once you wipe out all the small businesses and the jobs they provided, you have precious few people who can afford to buy your products?
Right. Right. They ought to read up on Henry Ford. You know, Ford always believed in paying his workers well because he realized that that they were the people he was selling cars to. So Amazon, you know, it's bringing its wage level up for its employees, but at the same time, Amazon is so efficient that it's causing net shrinkage throughout the economy. So they could pay their employees $50 an hour, and it's not going to do much for the U.S. economy. So yeah, the ripple effect of all these small businesses going down is hugely larger than all the lockdown survivors can put into the economy.
Also, isn't the goal of Amazon to replace all humans with robot workers?
Yeah, you have to believe that. I mean, some of the ways that these new warehouses are designed, you can see that in the plan, that they should operate with as few humans as possible. And we know that that's already true for some of the biggest companies. They don't really need much in the way of employees or capital investment. They're just software. And that would be true, let's say, for Uber. It's not their fleet of cars. It's really a fleet of privately owned cars being privately depreciated. And, it's not like Uber drivers are getting rich. So there's so many things really pointing in the direction of fewer employees everywhere. I'm just wondering when the other shoe's going to drop with the banks. You know, you can still go to a bank now and line up and talk to a teller as long as you're wearing your mask. But yesterday I got a check that I needed to deposit, and I did it just by taking a picture of the check front and back with my Samsung cell phone, and I hardly have to go to the bank at all. I mean, I used to enjoy going there just to get out of the house, but when you look at all the number of employees that can be easily displaced who are still there, namely all the tellers, but they're employees in many other industries, you can see the trend really. And we don't really have the cushion to provide for all those people. You know, a government stimulus checks or bailout checks forever. It can't happen.
Yeah, and when you mentioned, I think something about shoes or footwear, Adidas shut all their plants in China, unemploying something like 1 million to 3 million people. They built a mega factory in Germany that employs 60. That's the future of jobs.
That's pretty amazing. That's amazing because, the assembly of sneakers was somewhat labor intensive, and some of the factory plant cities that they built in China just to assemble Adidas and Reeboks and things like that, they were enormous. And China, I guess it's got its own problems. They're somewhat masked now because if you think we're stimulating, you ought to check out the numbers from China. They've got so much credit stimulus in the economy right now that they'll crash as hard as we will, even though all the usual idiots are looking at China as the bright spot in the world, but it's all fake. It's fake economic growth. So, but they have a particular problem though because they imported all of the labor into these Adidas factory cities from the farms. So people came out of regional employment where they were essentially tilling the land, and they filled up a lot of cities, and now they've got nowhere to go back to. They can't go back to the farms because Chinese farms have been mechanized and turned into giant manufacturing operations the same way they have here.
Rick, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Well, thanks for inviting me on, Jim. It is always a pleasure.
My guest has been Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. If you have any questions for Rick or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. Find us on Twitter @HouseStreet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.